All set. Thank you for everybody who's joining us online. I appreciate you joining us, and for anybody who's viewing, welcome to the new way of doing things to a large degree. Beginning in March, the landscape of Newfoundland and Labrador began to change as we saw the first case of COVID-19 recorded in the province, followed by a number of public health orders. This also marked a significant change for businesses in the province. Many non-essential businesses were ordered to close. This was particularly difficult, especially with these businesses still trying to recover from losses experienced during the state of emergency declared in mid-January because of the significant blizzard. Our government has been listening to the issues raised by this sector, and we've been discussing many of these challenges with the business community on a regular basis. In fact, we have another call with them later today. There's been considerable focus placed on finding ways and means to alleviate a number of their concerns. For example, we've introduced legislation which enabled food establishments to sell alcohol with takeout and food, and waived liquor license fees for the 2020-21 fiscal year. We've continued the wage subsidy support for employers, continued financial support for regulated child care and family care homes. We've provided support to private sector employees for the continuation of pay for employees required to self-isolate following their return from out-of-province travel due to COVID-19 travel restrictions. We've also made $2.25 million in funding available through the Agri-Foods Assistance Program and Land Development and Agriculture Infrastructure. We've increased the deferral of loan payments under the Innovation and Business Investment Corporation's Business Investment Fund for 6 months. We've partnered with the federal government to assist with commercial rent, and we've also partnered with the federal government on a lower income wage top-up for essential workers. And further details of this will be announced very soon. Today, I am pleased to announce the deferral or waiver of over $6 million in fees to further help ease some of the operational pressures that our businesses are facing and free up some cash flow in these uncertain times. Effective immediately, the following measures will be put in place. The collection of Workplace NL assessments from employers has been deferred to after August 31st of 2020 with no interest or penalties. Clearance letters will continue to be provided during the payment deferral period to allow contractors to meet certain reporting criteria and to continue to bid and operate. The interest-free payment plan for workplace injury insurance is extended beyond 2020 to March 31st of 2021 to allow employers more flexibility to pay. Safety training certificates are extended to August 31st, 2020 for confined space entry, fall protection, mine rescue, power line hazards, traffic control persons, first aid, and occupational health and safety committee members. I'm also pleased to announce the elimination or offer of rebates on aquaculture license fees, the deferral of annual Crown land fees for aquaculture sites, as well as a full rebate of base fish processor and buyer licensing fees to assist with fish processing plants and fish buyers. Payment of water usage charges for 2019 related to microbreweries, wineries, and distilleries, as well as aquaculture due in the 2020-21 fiscal year will be waived. Payment of water usage charges for all other industries will be deferred until March 31st, 2021. Licenses will not be cancelled for non-application for renewals until the public health restrictions have been lifted for real estate salespersons and agents, mortgage brokers, insurance companies, insurance adjusters, agents, representatives, and brokers, and for prepaid funerals. New license applications, however, will be processed for real estate salespersons and agents, mortgage brokers, insurance companies, insurance adjusters, representatives, agents, and their brokers. Businesses are eligible to have a portion of vehicle registration fees for vehicles registered to the business refunded if they are not in use. We've also deferred the requirement for businesses to file yearly returns under the Companies and Deeds Online and remittance of the accompanying filing fees. One of the initiatives suggested by the business sector for consideration is a red tape reduction portal, where businesses could suggest means by which the provincial government could reduce the regulatory burden on businesses. The goal of the engagement portal is to provide an avenue for members of the business community to bring forward suggestions to the provincial government regarding red tape reduction initiatives that could provide relief for members not only during the COVID-19 restrictions, but beyond when these restrictions are lifted. Government has, over the past, since 2015, employed red tape reduction with every cabinet paper, and every new regulation put in place has corresponding reduction in regulations. But this will give the business community, as well as citizens in the province, the ability to communicate directly with government on areas that they feel regulations can be improved. This initiative is currently being developed and will be launched in June. Every one of us knows the impacts of COVID-19 and how they've affected the province on many levels. As significant contributors to our provincial economy, the effects on business and the business sector have certainly been realized by us all. A healthy economy translates into healthy communities, and it is important that we support measures to assist businesses wherever and whenever possible. It is our hope that as a government, the options we've announced today, in addition to significant other initiatives that we've previously announced, will provide a level of relief to our business community. I know that we've been working in a number of departments, and we'll have further announcements in the coming days and weeks, including from TCII, Natural Resources, Service NL, as well as other departments. Thank you, and we are open for questions.
And at 11:40, up first is Patrick Butler with Radio Canada. Please go ahead.
Hi. First thing I want to ask is these new measures, how much do you expect these to cost the province?
Just over $6 million for the specific initiatives that we have announced today. That's in addition to other initiatives that we've previously announced.
And can you provide a bit of a further breakdown of some of the most expensive items on the list that you just gave us?
We can get a calculated breakdown for you of some of the initiatives announced by government, in addition to the federal-provincial partnerships where we've provided funding.
Sorry, do I get a third question?
We're gonna do another round of questions after we get through the list of that we have here in front of us.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Terry Roberts with CBC. Please go ahead.
Yeah, Minister, I wonder if you could just describe the level of pressure you've been receiving from businesses to take steps like this?
I mean, these are uncertain times. They're very challenging times for government, very challenging times for citizens in the province, including our business community. So we've been listening and dialoguing with our business community. They're obviously under pressure, and we understand that. A healthy economy is important in the province as well. And we have been having regular discussions with a number of business groups We'll continue to have dialogue with the business groups, including a dialogue later today. There are several other initiatives that are coming as a result of those dialogues that I know we've been working on, and officials in government have been costing and looking for the best ways to implement those. But to answer your question, I think during these times, first and foremost was the public health and safety of the people of the province, but everybody has felt the pressure.
I know you're speaking today as Minister of Service NL, but a lot of people have been talking about, obviously government has to try and is in a difficult financial situation, and there are, you're poised to deliver some raises to public sector workers in the fall. Will that still happen?
We will honour the negotiations that have been met in good faith. The NAPE, we've reached agreements with them several months ago with nurses. The agreement was all but put in place. They've agreed, government agreed to put things on hold. Literally, just as we entered COVID, the progress had been made on that. Both sides had agreed that the primary focus should be on public health and safety, and nurses did what nurses do best, and that is care for the people of the province. So the announcement of any tentative agreement was secondary to that.
Thank you. Next is Ashley Fitzpatrick with Almusland Labrador. Please go ahead.
Thank you. Minister, you mentioned businesses being eligible to have a portion of vehicle registration fees returned if the vehicles are not in use. Just wondering if you can give a little more information on how you're establishing, the vehicle numbers, or how that will actually work.
Well, some of them, school buses, for example, would not be in use. There are other vehicles that would not be in use in certain industries. So they would be entitled to a refund when the vehicle is not in use. We will dialogue with any industry or any business where it can be clearly identified that a vehicle was not in use and not necessary, and make the refunds available.
Okay. You mentioned red tape reduction, that will be this consultation process launched in June. I'm just wondering, is the idea that you're targeting maybe some reforms or changes being folded into a fall budget? Is that kind of the timeline or thinking there?
The timeline on any legislative or regulatory changes will be spread, not just into the fall, but beyond. Some regulations are much easier to change than others. Some of them are simply a regulatory change and can be done outside of the legislature. The vast majority would require legislative changes. We would require, some level of consultation on some changes, certainly analysis on all changes. Let me be clear that, this administration put in place a practice that any time there was a regulation put in place, there was corresponding reductions in regulations that had to happen as well in order to try and prevent a buildup of regulatory burden or requirement. But this is, an opportunity to dialogue directly with the people of the province, and including the business community, on areas where regulations may have outlived their purpose and can be changed, or areas where, because times change and new regulations or better regulations are needed, there has to be a balance. Anytime you look at changing or putting regulations in place, you have to balance protection of the public or protection of the province with a regulatory change. But this is an opportunity to have a good focus and hear from people with, throughout the province on where we can make improvements.
Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. Next, we have Brian Medor with the OCM. Please go ahead.
Good morning, Minister. Just wanted for clarification more than anything, water usage charges, microbreweries, would that not be municipal jurisdiction?
We have water usage fees that are collected by the provincial government. So outside of municipal, any municipal fees that may be collected, what we're doing is waiving provincial fees that are due or payable by certain industries. Other industries, we're deferring those fees.
Okay, and the business community, and we see this time and again through news releases, through comments coming in, comments on open line, what they would, they're still kind of shocked to see a situation where many in the business community have had either to take a pay cut or simply almost elimination of revenue in some cases. Still surprised to see that in the public sector there's no move to reduce any type of expense or salary or anything like that. Did you consider that? Because the business community is, time and again, is kind of concerned about that.
That's a good question. Many of the programs that have been put in place by the federal government do not apply to provincial public servants. Across the country, there was only one instance that I'm aware of in Alberta where teachers were laid off. But the programs that were put in place, the emergency response benefit and so on, were not accessible by provincial public servants. Across the country, again, provinces had made the decision. The federal government, in fact, with their public servants, made the decision. The economy was under enough stress. The federal government had promised to work with provinces as we come out of this to find ways to help alleviate some of the pressures that provinces are facing. We continue to dialogue with the federal government in that regard. But, to have significant layoffs or rollbacks within the public sector would have compounded the challenges within the economy with less spending power in the economy. On top of that, let me be absolutely clear, the vast majority of public servants are working.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have David Marr with the Telegram. Please go ahead.
Good morning. Thank you. The latest date that I'm seeing in terms of the measures that have been announced today is March 31st, 2021. Are any of the measures that are announced today, extending beyond that date?
I'm sorry, you came across a little muffled there. I couldn't hear your question.
Oh, pardon me, sorry. But of all the measures announced today, I'm just wondering if any of them extend beyond the end of fiscal 2021, or if any of these measures will continue beyond that date.
At this particular stage, we're focused on the end of the fiscal year, which is March 31st, 2021. Should the need occur, we'll continue to monitor and focus on, what measures or initiatives need to be put in place. But, we're focused on this fiscal year at the moment. Depending on when we come out of COVID-19 or the pandemic, depending on, when the economy, gets back to the new normal, we'll continue to evaluate as we go forward.
Thank you. And you mentioned the income wage supplement for essential workers. I'm just wondering if there's any update on the provincial participation in that program. Is there any expectation of the federal-provincial split in terms of funding and whatnot?
There is. We've agreed to partner with the federal government in cost-sharing that program. The program was outlined by the federal government. Each province was given some latitude in putting their own stamp on it to a certain degree, but within the confines of what the federal government had laid out. I believe when we announce the details of our program in the very near future, that people will see that it is certainly one of the best, if not the best, program, I believe, across the country.
Thank you.
Next, we have Leila Bodon with NTV. Please go ahead.
Hi, good morning. These initiatives seem to be mostly operational costs, but many businesses aren't operating. So with businesses saying people or customers make up their bottom line, is it a concern that the province is lagging behind here with the rest of the Canada in reopening so that they can have these customers come in?
Let me answer that in two ways. There is a risk assessment that is put in place with opening any sector of the economy. There's a business team in TCII put in place since COVID to look at how we can open certain sectors, and that is, that's now in operation. It's moving forward. It's accessible, I believe, on the COVID website. If anybody wants to, or a business wants to make a submission on how they can get back to operations. Part of the success in this province, and these restrictions are put in place by the Chief Medical Officer of Health with a great deal of analysis. We've been one of the more successful provinces in flattening the curve, and part of the reason for that is because of the measures put in place. Just as we entered into this with a great deal of consideration and thought by the Premier, the Minister of Health, and the Chief Medical Officer, we have to come out of it with a great deal of thought to ensure that we don't have a rebound in the number of cases or put the province at risk. If you move too quickly, you could find yourself back in the same situation where everything is shut. So, there's no guarantee we won't have cases no matter what we do. But, I think we're just over 2 weeks away, or about 2 weeks away from entering the next level, at which case you'll see retail and restaurants and other businesses being able to operate. The details of that will be outlined by the Chief Medical Officer of Health in how this can happen. But, I think it's important that we look at the long-term strategy in ensuring that when we do allow the economy to rebound, it has the greatest potential for success.
Okay. I'm just going to read you a tweet from someone in the business community because they're certainly a lot more informed than I am. So the COVID-19 curve in NL has been flat for over a month as government officials say the virus will be here for some time. We know that. The public health measures are working. But you, Minister, believe that we have a balance between those health measures and the economy? If you could elaborate a little bit more on that.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that? I couldn't hear the question.
I'm just reading from tweets from people in the business community, but just if you could elaborate what work you're doing to determine that we have a balance here between evaluating those public health measures and with the economy. I've spoken to several businesses who are closing or in the process of closing because of this slow to open. So what is it about this that tells you there will be some sort of balance for the people working in tourism and businesses in Newfoundland and Labrador right now?
I know that the Minister for Tourism, Culture, Industry and Innovation is coming forward in the very near future with an announcement and a program that government and his department have been working on that will in large part address the question that you've just raised. We are a couple of weeks away from entering the next level, which you'll see a number of restrictions eased. I'm trying to answer the question to the best of my ability because the question you're asking really rests in another department, really rests with the Chief Medical Officer of Health, but based on discussions and government working as a whole, I'm trying to answer the question that you're asking to the greatest degree possible. A healthy economy is also very important. But first and foremost is the health and safety of the people of the province. You can be some will criticize government for moving too quickly. Some will criticize government for moving too slowly. But I know there's a great deal of thought going into how we ease restrictions and get the economy up and running, with the focus on ensuring the greatest potential for success in terms of public health and safety.
Thanks.
Thank you. We do have time for additional questions, so we'll start at the top of the queue again, beginning with Patrick Butler with Radio Canada. Please go ahead.
Hi. Premier Ball said earlier this week that the province was about to announce several measures for businesses, and he mentioned he alluded to those being particularly important for the tourism sector and for the oil and gas sector. Is this what he was referring to, what we're seeing today, or is there more coming down the pipe for those industries specifically?
There are announcements coming from other departments, literally within days, and others within weeks. We'll see further announcements. This is one announcement. We've had previous announcements, and we'll have other announcements as we move forward. No, this is not the announcement designed to deal with the hospitality and tourism sectors. That is coming. It's not the announcement designed to deal with oil and gas or mining. That will also be coming. This is simply, some of the issues in terms of deferrals of fees and licenses and registrations to help ease some of the burden within the business community. It's one spoke in a wheel of many spokes.
Thank you. Next, Trey Roberts with CBC. Please go ahead.
Yes, Minister. What's the big ticket item here? There's quite a few here. $6 million. What's the big ticket item there?
There's a number of initiatives across a number of sectors of the economy that add up to in excess of $6 million in either deferrals or waivers of fees. One of the things here, it certainly is the portal to allow the public and the business community to provide their thoughts in terms of changes that may be required in certain regulations or legislation. But overall, you're seeing discounts, for example, in water usage fees for microbreweries. These are very small operations, and every bit of help adds up. You're seeing fish processing and fish buyers that have an impact here in terms of some waivers and some deferrals of fees. There's no one area here that you can say, aha, but it's spread across many industries and designed to help alleviate some of the burden that industries are facing. Again, this is one spoke in a wheel of many spokes. We have a cabinet and a premier. We've all been working on initiatives, and you'll see other initiatives announced as we go forward.
Thank you. Next is Ashley Fitzpatrick with All Newfoundland Labrador. Please go ahead.
Yeah, I was actually wondering about, a lot of these seem to be specifically relevant to a particular area. Aquaculture comes to mind, fisheries. There's a wide variety here, but I'm just wondering, are all of these a direct response to an ask from industry, or is there anything in the mix here that's sort of a proactive or a gimme from government, if you will?
Much of this has been based on dialogue back and forth with the business community. Again, we will see other announcements that are to a large degree proactive, to some degree based on consultation with business groups and the hospitality sector, and the energy sector, for example. As we move forward, there will be other announcements. some of them considerably more significant than this today. But everything, when you put everything together, we've had other announcements previously in partnerships with the federal government. None of them in and of themselves is the only answer. They all add up to a larger sum.
Right. So just for clarity, these would be responses to industry in these particular cases.
Very much in response to industry, yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Brian Medora with VOCM. Please go ahead.
I'm good, thanks.
Thank you. David Marr with the Telegram. Please go ahead.
Thank you again, Minister Osborne. I wonder if you put on your Finance Minister cap for just 1 second, and is there any update on something of a fiscal update? The Premier mentioned previously that that we might be able to take a look at the numbers up to March 31st of this year. Any idea on a timeline there?
Yeah, well, we're hoping, we said within a week or two was our hope. Just to put it in perspective and to give a little bit of background, we were ready to go with telling you what 2019-20 looked like for the first week of April. When this pandemic started, officials in finance turned their focus to working with the federal government on provincial federal initiatives, working with the federal government on federal initiatives that would have an impact on the province, and working on provincial initiatives and response. The focus was not on figuring out the change in 1920. We're talking 2 to 3 weeks of impact as a result of COVID-19, but that 2 to 3 weeks dropped the 365-day average on oil from above $63 to just above $61, literally in that 2 to 3 week period on a 365-day average oil price per barrel, a drop of $2 over the entire year in a little over 2 weeks. And we also had payroll, income, business, and consumable taxes all significantly impacted. And I realize it's 1/25th or 1/26th of the fiscal year, but the numbers we had on paper and ready to present, on or around the first week of April, were no longer accurate, and took a great deal of calculation and work by the department to determine exactly what the impact was in that last 2 to 3 weeks of the fiscal year. So, now that we've seen a bit of a lull in activity as a result of the pandemic, they've been able to turn their focus to recalculating those numbers. It is certainly our hope that they'll be ready within the next week or so. As soon as they're ready and we can provide an update to the people of the province, we will.
Thank you.
Next, we have Leila Boudouin with NTV. Please go ahead.
Minister, I was just reading this morning about how COVID-19 has forced governments to become more creative at making things work. What have you or your department done to get creative and come up with solutions to your technology and to work through the social distancing and climate that is COVID-19?
I mean, I think across departments throughout the province, even with businesses, you've seen creativity. One example is very early, working with the Newfoundland and Labrador Liquor Corporation and with NAPE, just as one example, how we were able to continue to operate the liquor stores in the province and become creative in terms of how they operate and providing a safe work environment for the employees there. You look at, there are several examples, just that is just one, but we've had to, through OCIO, very quickly, and they've done a fantastic job in preparing, the public service to be able to work remotely and put in place measures and initiatives that allow not only conference calling and video conferencing to a much larger magnitude than was there, but providing the equipment and tools for people to work from home, VPN access and so on from home. So much of this happened very quickly, and government and departments as a whole kind of hit the ground running. Nobody could have anticipated the changes that would take place here almost on a daily basis. But I think government and departments and the public service has responded to those challenges and those changes.
Thank you, Minister Osborne. The time for questions has now ended. Thank you for participating in today's availability. If you have any other questions, please feel free to forward them along to myself. That's all. Thank you.
Thanks again.
Thank you.